This is a Socialist News and Views special interview.
I'm Nick Schillingford, coming to you from the Urban Cabin Studios in South Minneapolis with this special interview. So, on Socialist News and Views, we let folks introduce themselves. Do you want to just tell our audience who you are?
Oh, sure. Okay. I'm Lydia Snow. I was a instructor at Northeastern Illinois for 18 years as part-time, sometimes almost made it up to full-time for a couple of years, and then eventually got cut back so that I had to retire, not that I wanted to retire, mostly because of low enrollment and issues with being able to, keep people on. But it was a very interesting time period when I was employed there, because a lot of things happened in the adjunct movement that I was directly involved in. And so then I was able to write this story about, what happened when I was teaching there and how I was involved in over, a period of about 10 years. So it took me a while to wake up, but
Yeah, you wrote this book called An Adjunct Story. And I know you are posting it on your Substack one chapter at a time. And that's on the Substack Adjunct headquarters. I started reading the book. I haven't finished it yet. I think I'm just partway through chapter 14 now. But I've read through, this amount of it. And I thought you said something in the beginning, like it wasn't word for word truth, but, or you took some liberties maybe or something. I don't know exactly what you said, but, in chapter 2, it's called getting in the door. And you outlined your experience of meeting a person representing the union and starting to learn about the union a little bit more. And I've been a long time organizer. You have been, we're always trying to figure out, like, how are we getting people involved? So, that was kind of the first thing that jumped out at me. What was your story of finally getting convinced to join the struggle in the workplace and, eventually for a better world?
Well, I was very, I'm gonna say anti-union, but our union was centered from a tenured professor's perspective. And that since has changed over the course of time. But it, it was very frustrating for me because they treated me, very, they kind of looked down on part-time instructors, especially. I mean, the full-time instructors, they had some clout, but I wasn't anywhere near that. And so my friend Marcos, he came to Northeastern, and he was a union organizer, but he had actually done teaching and his research in union organizing in Florida. So he was very interested in getting my perspective included in the union perspective. So he was the one who was trying to get me to join the union. And then eventually he left and went back to organizing.
Yeah.
He had a tenure track position.
Oh,
He
sure.
could have easily stayed and gotten it, but what happened was he told me he thought he really didn't think he was a good teacher, but that's not really the case. I mean, he really does teach the work that he does. He teaches, but he also does research. He's a sociologist, so he puts the numbers together and everything. So he helped me a lot with my campaign because he was able to look at what was happening to instructors, part-time instructors, and be able to document it in an academic way with graphs and all of that, show how they were forcing us out, and also how that had affected their lives, on a day-to-day sort of, experience. And that was really eye-opening to me because I had never really talked to anybody about it before. And then once I got involved in the movement, then I met people from all over the country and even the world who were involved in the adjunct struggle, mostly like through Facebook groups, but also, going to Washington, D.C. with the SEIU
Nice.
first adjunct Congress. And yeah, and then when SEIU came to Chicago, Marcos came with me to the very first meetings, and they brought adjuncts from all of the universities that they were trying to organize. They just left Boston. They
Nice.
came to Chicago, and they were very welcoming to us in terms of sharing our experience and talking to the other people that were there. So then I learned a lot more about what was happening to part-time faculty in the greater Chicago area, and then I made more friends here.
So how
Uh,
long were you teaching before you got involved with the union?
I'd say it was about 7 years.
Okay.
Um, and as Marco said, the best way to become radicalized is to work for the opposition.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually wanted to work with the president, with this group, with this university advisory council. It was a new sort of senate, but it
Mm,
was for everybody in the university. So it included the janitors and all of the departmental secretaries, administrative assistants, and tenured people, and then instructors. So they wanted me to do some research, and that was like, 2006, about what were the instructors' concerns. And from there, it was like opening up this huge, can of worms,
right.
because I found out all of these people all over the country had been trying to address this. Actually, Minnesota is a place that University of Minnesota had a huge organization within the university that was trying to rectify the situation with better pay and
Sure.
things like that. But as soon as I brought up any of that stuff in this meeting, then they would just completely, get out of here. I don't know what you're talking about, like, or they would just pretend not to hear me altogether, like it was just, um, so then I just, once they put together the organization, they had the bylaws, I asked one of these administrators, could I see the numbers of how many instructors there are, how many, what's the pay, because I was like trying to put together some documents. And so when I told Marcos that I had all this stuff, he was like, "Oh, that's so great!" Like that you can't
Nice.
get that stuff. Um, so at that same time, the university got involved in this, land grab in the neighborhood, and they were trying to build a dorm, but they basically through land, eminent domain, they took over a whole block, um, and they won the case and and everybody had to leave. And so then we ended up being involved in a neighborhood struggle as well as the adjunct struggle. It all kind of came together. Um, and that was very empowering to see how the administration, with campus securities, I can't think of it now. Oh God, it's in the book, but
Sure.
it's a real estate company that just comes in and it buys dorms for the university.
Oh, sure.
I mean, they build them, but then you have to pay them back. And so, at one point, Northeastern was paying them like $600,000 a year because they didn't have enough students that were living in this dorm.
Wow.
It had to be like a third full or something, so it
Mhm.
wasn't even. So
Wow.
after 10 years, I guess they do own it now, but um, in the beginning, it was really a bad idea. I mean, it still is a bad idea, I think.
Yeah.
It's a commuter college, it always has been. And now all the international students can't come, and they were the ones that really needed a place to live. But anyway,
Mm.
um, yeah,
So is that what is driving the loss of enrollment? There is that do you know
well,
or
yeah, I mean, a lot of it I think is COVID. That was the
Mm,
beginning. But before that, it was the state not funding higher education. And there's still, even though we have a Democratic, leader right now, there still isn't enough money really to keep these smaller state universities going in the way that they used to be going. Like when I started working there, it was right after the Iraq War, I guess. And I had like 70 students in a class, and because a lot of people, just went back to school because the economy had collapsed and there was really nothing you could do. But you know what I mean? It was like
Right.
a lot of people lost jobs, and so since then, things have changed, and it's just not as what I was going to say. I think maybe 4,000 people graduated this year, and they used to have 2 graduations a year.
Oh, wow.
Now
Okay.
they just have 1. At one point it was like 10,000. So yeah, it's really, and then a lot of the students aren't prepared for college, and so they end up dropping out, for different reasons. Mainly because, the financial situation is so bad right now for working class people.
Oh, yeah.
It's very hard to keep working full time and do well in school. Although a lot of people do it,
Yeah.
but there is not a lot of support. So anyway, yeah, that was a big part of it. The furloughs, the cutbacks, the state being in bad shape financially.
Yeah, I'm a nurse, and when I was in the Minnesota Nurses Association, and I was in the hospital, and I was talking to management at some of these meetings that we would have on a monthly basis, during the contract and stuff. At a certain point, I was like, okay, these meetings are, if they're not coming to these meetings in good faith in any way, that then they're not, these meetings aren't accomplishing anything on their own without
Right.
like some serious pressure being brought to bear on the administration when they think they don't have anything to worry about, because they come back meeting after meeting. Oh, were we going to talk about that? Oh, is it that? Oh yeah, I should look into that. Or, oh, I hadn't heard that. All this kind of nonsense that they give to you. So, and I'm sure you got the runaround plenty of times after that first time with administration and everything. So
Yeah, the administration at Northeastern has really, was really terrible. And then it kind of fell apart at one point, and they basically hired somebody now who actually was a professor there and is very progressive, and so it's changed for the better.
That's good.
Yeah, but I mainly because they can't afford to bring in the people that
Right.
want to get paid all this so much money.
Strike breakers. Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, yeah,
I
I
mean,
also like the wheel of adjunct misfortune that you had. It was like that was in the on the Substack in the book, like an infographic. It connects to all the things that you kind of covered. It's talking a little bit about all the things educators can't pay if they don't get paid, or things they can't do if they don't get paid.
right.
Do you want to just talk about that a little bit? All the
Oh,
things that
yeah.
educators can't pay for if they don't get paid.
Yeah, and the main thing is that adjuncts are almost always on a 4.5-month contract. So every time you come back to teach, you have to redo all of the paperwork, like from the beginning.
That's terrible.
And then you try to get a parking pass, and you can't get a parking pass because your chair forgot to send in the paperwork. And it's just constant this, am I going to get paid or am I not going to get paid? And if they don't get the contract in, then you end up getting paid a month late, and we don't get paid in the summer. So by then, it's like October, and you have, it's very, very difficult to survive without getting paid. So most adjuncts have other jobs teaching. No, they go from university to university, they teach. And this also creates a lot of stress in their lives because, they have to get used to all these different systems. of communication. Like you have one kind of email, and then you have a different kind. You have Blackboard versus Canvas versus, Desire to Learn, which is what I use. And then you have to figure out how to use all of this with the security. And then you get locked out because you didn't get hired in time to get into the computer so that you can check who's in your class and, all of this stuff. So it's one thing after another that just the stress level is just so high, and then the other thing is not having access to health insurance. So you're constantly trying to get one more class, so you can try to get into the health insurance. And I was looking at I had health insurance at Northeastern, but a lot of universities don't even have it available, at all. But once the Affordable Care Act came in, universities used that as a way to then cut all of instructors, adjuncts, classes so that they couldn't go above the level where they would get insurance. And they would never say that.
Right.
It was just a big, what happened? Like, I had 3 classes, now I have 2. Like, how am I supposed to live on 2 classes? So there's been a lot of, documentation on how difficult that is. But, literally friends of mine have died from having lack of health insurance. And then this intense anxiety about it also causes a lot of mental health issues. And, so it's a very stressful job for people who are very committed to teaching, who want to teach, or committed to the struggle, who want to be there for their students. But you kind of get hit from all angles. You're getting hit from your colleagues. You're getting hit from the fact that you're pretending to be a professor. You're not really a professor. Like, you don't have tenure, so who the hell are you? So it's very difficult to build up the self-esteem that you need to be effective when you're actually teaching. And that was something that through the course of the book that I found I could teach better when I became empowered. And I realized that all of this stuff was out here. It wasn't in here.
Right.
I was like, all right, I can do that. I can fight these people and I can be an effective teacher also.
That's awesome.
And the students really responded to that as well, because they don't like being lied to. You know what I mean? They want to know what's happening. Why is this university about to close? Why are they threatening? A big part of it was they wanted the students to go to Springfield and, rally and lobby and ask for more money from the state. They're like, why is it my responsibility to keep this university going? I'm just here. I'm a student. I'm
exactly.
Exactly. And I just, I'd come right out and say, I don't expect you to do that at all. I won't do it.
Right.
Because they're not paying me enough for that.
Exactly.
I'm here for you, So we did things in the classroom, where we had teach-ins and held up, signs and sent them off to Springfield. And, I was just like, well, so what if we don't get through everything in the syllabus? This is their education. They need to be empowered as well. It's not just about me becoming empowered. And so then there was a much deeper bond that I was able to build with my students over the course of the time I was teaching there.
Yeah, I think that that comes out in the book. It's like if you didn't have a union, or you didn't have any kind of form of an organization, basically the entity or the individual that's employing you can pretty much do whatever they want, say whatever they want, make up whatever rules, whether they're allowed to make them up or not. And they're kind of the boss of it if there's nobody else to say otherwise, and there's no organized force to say otherwise. But you were saying about students, that kind of gets to the next thing I had been thinking about, which was the piece. There was the other piece in there on the Substack called Towards an Adjunct Music Teaching Philosophy. And I thought that was great. I think that kind of goes back to when I was saying in the beginning, how do we bring people into a movement, but how do we like communicate information to them even more specifically? You know, how do you share information with students? You asked in the book, what makes a good teacher? You talked about tenured professors looking for perfection sometimes or oftentimes. What have you learned about learning or about teaching students?
Well, I've learned so much from my students, and everything I have to say, most of what I know, I've learned from my students. But I was teaching music and I was teaching teachers how to teach music. So I learned, the situation in which they were brought up and how music had empowered them, the ones that were becoming music teachers, how they wanted to give back to their communities, how, the dreamers especially felt it was a way for them to help their families as well as their students, and the students that they. And then I've gone on to see them as very effective music teachers in big public high schools in Chicago, doing all kinds of things, and I'm just like in awe because I couldn't do that. I couldn't go and do band with 70 kids, and I don't speak Spanish, and
Right.
some of the schools they work at are very difficult, places to be, but they have a very strong philosophy about teaching music. And so that was something that I had them write in my class. And so every year I kept thinking, oh, I'm going to write mine. I'm going to write mine. I had to write something, that when I applied for jobs, which I was constantly doing to try to hopefully get a better job, somewhere.
Sure.
Never panned out, but
right.
it was always
it
about
never
me,
does.
whatever. It wasn't really my philosophy. And so when I finally wrote that, it was like, this is what I really feel about teaching music. And there is a connection that adjuncts have with students that is very real and important. And part of that is, we are the ones that they hire because we have experience. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you're not going to find somebody with a PhD who's taught in elementary schools for, 15 years, whatever,
Right.
or who's, worked in public high schools. So they have to hire people from the community to help the students understand what's really like to do, like not just in this kind of philosophical way, bless you.
Yeah,
But yeah, so I felt like that writing that, it's not that I dislike tenure people. I sometimes think maybe
no.
it comes across
Yeah.
that way, but it's that we are so denigrated and put down and looked down upon in the academic community that it gets internalized, and the students don't understand that. They don't see that because they're just meeting you. You're just a person, you know what I mean? Like
They don't
they
know
don't
all the backstory. Yeah.
yeah, they don't. And so you can be real with them, you can let relax and be who you
Right.
are, share what you know. Um, and it's very powerful. And it brings the real world into the classroom in a way that, a lot of people say, well, why don't we just give everybody tenure? Like that's what we should do. That would solve the problem. And I don't think that would really solve the problem because there are different kinds of things that you teach, they should just really value what we teach and pay us more,
Right. I know, right?
I don't want to do PhD. I have no interest in that, like I
shouldn't have to. I mean, you shouldn't have to, really.
I mean, it is important. I understand it. I value it, that these people have put in so much work, and you read about it and you're like, oh my God, it's almost like being in the army, what they do to them. They have to really give up their sense of self, and they have to like give in to their advisor, and there's all of these steps that they have, and a lot of people don't even make it, because
Right.
they turn them down and whatever. And so, yeah, it's its own thing, but I don't think
Yep.
it's the solution. I don't think giving everyone tenure is the solution. And they always say, "Oh, academic freedom," and it's like they don't speak up. We're the ones that speak up
Right.
because we have the least to lose. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like we're on the front line there, and it's just like in any job. Who's the person who's really gonna, speak out? Not the one who's making $250,000 a year.
Mm-hmm. Right. Probably not. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes they do,
Sometimes.
but it's kind of
Not usually.
unusual, you know?
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
So,
I don't know. We taught a philosophy class for a professor when he had a medical issue in college. In my undergrad, I went to school for marketing communications, and then I got my master's of nursing. Um,
wow.
but
Yeah.
when in this philosophy class, he said like when he first got out of school and then he went there to be a professor, he was like, he had all this stuff going in his head, and he got in the class and he's like, he gives them all this information and he's like, okay, like, what do you guys think? And they're just like totally overwhelmed by like the amount of information that he like put on them. So like he was like trying to explain to us in the office when we were going to teach this one like half section or whatever, like that like just give them a little bit of the information and then let them interact with that and then give them a little bit more of the information. He's like, sometimes he's like, when I was first getting into it, I was so excited and I would just like dump all this information on them and they like didn't really respond. And then I just got like, oh, I don't know how to teach. Like I'm not getting through to these students or whatever. But like, then he said he learned that he needed to give them like little bits of information. And I was just listening to something else about kind of like dripping the information in little bites and stuff the other day. And I was thinking about how it's like, a lot of the teaching is kind of seems like it's done not that way, very
Yeah.
didactic, and they like to like pile it all on you and like that's pretty much it. But that's not really the best way for us to learn.
Yes. Yeah. Especially with music and children,
Oh yeah.
I mean, I actually think in my experience that it's not that different. That's one of the things I said in that is that children respond to music innately.
Mm,
Um, and
true.
it's mostly through experience and making music that they are able to then understand it. So you can't just talk to them about it and say, well, this is an eighth note, here's a 16th note, which is a way a lot of music teachers go out and try to teach. That's what they do. They just present what they learned. And, that doesn't work with adults either,
Right.
So I spent a lot of time moving, singing, clapping, playing instruments, and they were so happy. I mean, so relieved, that they could just do stuff and not just have to be sitting there taking notes and,
Right.
but, you have to do that eventually. But, um, yeah, the more you engage over, a period of time, then the more they can learn. And then I found that too, that the more I learned from them when I just quit talking constantly, and like you said, and just, here's more information, here's more,
Right.
and they're just going, no, no, no.
Exactly right. Yeah. It's hard to
So,
figure out how much. Yeah.
yeah.
It's hard to know until you've done it. It's just like anything. You don't really know until you've actually done it a little bit, what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
It takes a while,
mhm.
Um, but I enjoyed it, but it definitely took a toll on me, and
Mm,
I think now that I'm retired, I can feel my brain is kind of coming back again.
sure.
I feel like I can write, I can think, I can create my own um, thoughts that aren't just totally centered around that.
Right. Which is
Um,
nice.
yes,
I bet.
very nice. It's very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, in that chapter 13, I had some friends that were big fans of Jane McAlevey, and I see
Oh,
you
yeah.
reference her in the book with the raising expectations, raising hell. Are you a big fan of McAlevy's work? I think I went to one like lecture Zoom thing with like a small group organized in the union, but I'm not a super familiar with them McAlevy's work, but I should become more familiar with it. But.
Yeah, that was Marcos's idea, was because she was such a hard ass, she just wouldn't do what the union wanted her to do.
Right.
She basically figured out she had her own ideas, and she loved involving, the like the nurses or wherever she was organizing
Yeah.
people at the bottom,
Right.
um, and that that was such a strange idea to the union that I was in.
I know,
That
right?
such a thing. Like they were like, "What?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm paying dues, like, and I
Hmm.
make like a quarter of what you or
Right.
what, a tenth of what you make."
Hmm. Yeah, I think, yeah, the sooner you can involve people and the like faster you can like immediately respond, like the better. Like I definitely had some things, and when I was in the hospital and I was in the union and I was a steward and stuff, I had things that uh you send an email like right away or something, like some policy that suddenly came out of nowhere that definitely did not have a basis in anything that have ever been agreed upon with between nurses and administration. And then, type up this email. I think I put something like, 10 safety concerns with this or something like that. And then I typed that up. And then I got like four or five other people to sign on the email with me. And I just sent that over. And there nothing, they never admit that anything happened. You just never hear about it again, and they move on to their next horrible thing that they're going to try to do or whatever, but it just disappears, at least for a while. that's been
Right.
that's been my experience. So I think the sooner you can just like, take that stuff on, it's always good if you can just, but it's not always easy to figure out how to do it, that's for sure. But if you can find a way to get people together. And then I also, I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before. I had another time when I was in the emergency room, and it was during the height of the George Floyd uprising here in Minneapolis, which they just had the anniversary of the murder of George Floyd here recently.
Mhm.
Um, and I was in the emergency room, and one of the nurses, I can't remember, actually, it might have been somebody else. It might have been, no, I think it was a nurse that was coming in for the day. And they said, we need a Black Lives Matter here in the hospital. And I was like, we have one. It's called a union. Like we should start, like we gotta like use it more. And like, I don't know, it's funny. Like they were like, yeah, I know, but like what we need is this. And in that particular case, everybody didn't like the manager in the emergency room, and it was like, nobody wanted to deal with them. So I was in the float pool, so I was kind of like outside. So I try to like use that position to like aim some fire, so to
Yeah.
speak, aim some concerns at the administration in that way. Um, well, I really appreciate you talking to me. I recommend everybody should go check out the book on Substack and read it, and especially if they're an educator or if they're an adjunct professor. Is there anything else you want to share or you want to mention or anything before you go,
Just
Lydia?
that last thing you said really brought up something,
Yeah.
like safety concerns. When I was doing that organizing with SEIU, and we met professors, from other universities, like at the Art Institute, they were so worried about their health, like
Right.
losing their health insurance because they're dealing with all of these like, you know, uh, toxic, like,
Right.
well, paint is not toxic, but like torches and
Yeah. Yeah.
sculpting,
Yeah.
all this stuff.
Potential
And they're like,
hazards
"Oh,
for
sorry,
sure.
you lost your health insurance," and it's like, what? Like, so then anyway, there's a lot of safety concerns. And the other thing about being an adjunct that really is important, I mean, is that we're not considered real employees.
Mhm.
So when you apply for, unemployment or something, they're like, "No, you're an educator. You have the summer off." It's like, "No, I don't have the summer off."
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I may get offered a class in the fall, or I may not. Like, it's
Right.
not. Um, and so that whole culture of treating an entire group of faculty as not even human, you know, is has affected so many lives. People I know, I mean, through suicide, I've known several adjuncts who've died alcoholism, mental health issues. And it's all because they are blaming themselves, you
Right.
know? And so that's why I feel so strongly
Humans
about it.
weren't made for this stuff.
No, no. And especially academia needs to do better, you know? Like they are smart enough and they should be compassionate enough to notice their colleague is like on death's door because they can't afford their diabetes medication. You know, they don't even notice, they don't ask, they don't think.
Right.
Um, so that's why the anger has built up in me because I've seen so much loss. And it continues, you know, it hasn't gone away in any sense. So anyway, I did that.
It's
That's
amazing
what.
what these systems can do to people, even sometimes people we thought we knew, that then they don't really follow through on things when they
Well,
get
it's amazing, yeah, what human beings can hide too,
right, right, right.
because they're so concerned about getting their classes and being able to pay the rent and um, getting their kids into this public school and being able to get all of the
All
things
those
that.
struggles they hide, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like working at McDonald's. I mean, it's not much better, really. But we're very good at masking and just, pretending that we're just like they are, and we're
Yep.
not at all.
Right, right. Well, I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for getting together with me and speaking
Thank
with me.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Um, and that was our special interview. Thanks for tuning in. Solidarity.
This has been a Socialist News and Views special interview.